The long-awaited Tata Harrier Facelift is here, and before we dive into the styling updates, the updates to the interior, all of that is quite extensive. I want to bring your attention to the one big dynamic flaw that we pointed out on the earlier Harrier and the Safari, and that's the steering. Steering on the Harrier is very light, very lifeless. It is difficult to place it with accuracy, and when you're driving it fast, which the chassis is capable of, the steering, it robs you a little bit of confidence. It needs to be more planted and it definitely needs more weight. And that has finally been addressed on the Harrier Facelift. That is the big mechanical update. Out goes the earlier hydraulic power steering and in comes a smoother, more precise, less reactive electric power steering. It really transforms the driving experience of the Harrier, and that's why before we talk about the facelift, we're going to hit the road and talk about the driving experience on the updated Harrier. If you recall, the steering on the Harrier and the Safari, hydraulic power steering on the earlier ones, it used to constantly fidget and squirm in your hands. In some cases, it was too heavy. In some instances, it was too light. And overall, it just didn't feel properly sorted. Plus, if you had undulations or indents on the road, it would kick back a fair bit. This was a particular problem while going around corners, and strangely for that hydraulic power steering, you didn't get much in the way of feel, just a lot of reactions, a very reactive steering, and that was not calm. This is now calm. The EPAS has made it so much smoother, so much easier to drive. It no longer fidgets, it no longer gives you those weird sensations. It just feels normal, and that is transformative in the driving experience of the Harrier. In fact, that gives you so much confidence now that you can go around corners without having to be at 8/10s or 9/10s. You don't have to be like fully aware, fully concentrating, because it just goes through smoothly. It makes direction changes easily. It's zero effort, and that's what you want in an SUV of this category. This is not a sports car where you want all that feel and sensations. This is not a 911 where you want the steering to kick back. You want something that can cover speed calmly, safely, and in confidence. And the Harrier, it does that now. I'm amazed how the steering, just the steering, elevates the driving experience of the Harrier. I would be doing you a disservice if I did not point out that our test Harrier had a few quality niggles. The steering wheel, for starters, is not pointing straight. I'm driving in a straight line, but the steering wheel is slightly turned to the right. There's also poor paint finish on the wheel caps. The rubber cover on the clutch pedal came off. A panel fell off from the tailgate, and the finish around the gear lever is of rather poor quality. This is the third facelift on the Harrier, and if you ask me, this is the most impressive facelift. Now, the hard parts and the metal parts remain the same. So the bonnet is unchanged, the fender is unchanged, the bumper is new, and that is the big update. These LED eyebrow DRLs are carried over, but now it gets this connecting strip, which makes it a full width LED DRL. In the night, it has a really good road presence, but I have a philosophical objection to this, because to me, the EVs, their characteristic signature is that full width DRL. Look at the Nexon EV, that has got the full width DRL, the ICE does not have it, but here all the versions have it. I personally think it should be restricted only to EVs, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments. As for the rest of the styling updates, the Harrier gets the split grille treatment, whereas the Safari does not have the split grille, and that is the big visual identifier. Tata Motors calls this the parametric grille, though I think I remember Hyundai talking also about a parametric grille. Out here on the edges of the bumper, you have these air curtains for better aero, and you have these vertically stacked LED lights. Gone are the earlier halogen lights. Again, Tata Motors is calling this Ice Cube something, and I remember Kia talking about Ice Cube in the past. But overall, the effect is very impressive. Bold, in your face, and very distinctive. Over on the side, the wheels. These are a new alloy wheel design. The wheel sizes start at 17, goes up to 19. 19s are on the dark edition. This one is this yellow gold, which looks really striking. You get the Harrier lettering on the doors in I think a new font. The mirrors are carried over, but compared to the first generation Harrier, these are better profiled, so you don't have those big blind spots. You get the two-tone paint effect. Earlier, the C-pillar, this element used to be in chrome or metal effect. Now, this has been blacked out. But otherwise, the profile remains more or less unchanged. Actually, it is unchanged because nothing has changed. And at the rear, the tail lamps are connected by a full width LED light. So that again cuts a nice striking shape on the road. And if you hunt for this button out here, you'll notice that the Harrier has got a powered tailgate and also a big boot. The Harrier is the 5-seater, the Safari is the 7-seater. Below the bumper, those fake exhausts, those are also taken out. So this has been smoothened out. And the overall effect is of a really striking, very visually appealing car. In terms of the visual appeal, I would give it a 9.5, maybe even a 10 on 10. Tata Motors' designers have really done a damn good job. I love its robust suspension. Look at the way it goes over speed breakers with proper authority. It doesn't throw your passengers around. It protects your back. It keeps you comfortable. Over broken patches of road, you can just thunder down it without thinking at all, without worrying about anything going to happen to either the car or your passengers screaming. And then it's got diesel torque. So this engine is unchanged. It's the 2-liter diesel engine, the same engine that is made by Fiat. In fact, the factory in Ranjangaon where this engine is made is a joint venture project between Fiat, FCA, Stellantis now, and Tata Motors. So in essence, this is partly made by Tata Motors themselves, but it is a Fiat design. Well, now a Stellantis design. It makes the same power output, 168 bhp, same torque, 350 Newton meters of torque. And this one is the manual. It's actually a while since I drove a manual Harrier. I think only that very first, the launch edition Harrier, I drove with a manual. After that, it's all been with the automatic transmission. And I have to say, go for the automatic. I don't know the prices, but I'm assuming it'll be 1.5 lakhs more expensive, the automatic. That is the 6-speed automatic that they buy from Hyundai. And that is a far better transmission, far better suited to the overall character and makeup of the Harrier. I'll tell you one big problem with this. Well, two big problems. The first one is that the clutch, you depress it into the floor pan and not straight. So that feels a bit odd. Normally, how do you press the clutch? You press the clutch straight, right? But here, you're pressing it a little down, which is a little awkward. It's not very ergonomic. The second is the armrest, it fouls with your elbow while you are shifting. If you notice how my hand is, so my elbow is actually in the indent of this armrest. So to shift, I have to actually lift my elbow. Of course, these are things that when you live with the car, you actually get used to it. Now the connectivity is wireless, so you get wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. It's got a 40-watt USB-C, so that fast charges your phone, which is very cool. Your Apple Maps can be projected onto your digital cluster. I have to point out, it's not Google Maps. Everybody in India uses Google Maps. So Google Maps still remains on your infotainment screen. This is a 12.3-inch infotainment screen. The digital cluster is 10.25 inches. So your Apple Maps gets projected onto your cluster. And notice that because this also has the blind spot warning as part of the whole ADAS suite. So you put on your indicator and the full center screen is taken over by the camera, which is a nice safety move. But you can't see the maps out here. On the ADAS front, the Tata Harrier gets all the features that were seen on the Harrier Red Dark and the Safari Red Dark, now with the addition of adaptive cruise control with stop and go. The interiors are designed really well. So the steering wheel, again, the new Tata Motors steering wheel design. This is not the same steering wheel from the Nexon. This is larger in terms of the diameter, and this is 4-spoke, which Atish said that it reminds him of the old Mercs. The old 124 Mercs also had 4-spoke steering wheel designs. So this looks nice, but again, in terms of the finish, that last 5% is missing. You see the edges, they're not aligned properly. The gaps are not equal. The tactile feel is not there. And to operate, say, this volume toggle. The indent for it is not deep enough, so most often I end up using my nails to operate it. And you have to use these because there are no physical volume buttons out here. They've removed it all. So your aircon panel is new. Luckily for the aircon panel, there are physical toggle switches for the temperature and the blower, but everything else are these touch buttons. The volume control is out here on the screen, so it's not very intuitive. This is something that customers will crib about in the long run. Your passenger, for instance, how do they adjust the volume? They'll have to go to the touch screen, fiddle around with that. It's obviously never accurate because you have to press it exactly over there. Just a physical knob works so much better. It's 5 years since the Harrier was launched and it's already on its third update. That just shows the speed at which Tata Motors is implementing changes to the Harrier. But it also does show that Tata Motors didn't get the Harrier right the first time round and they had to quickly implement updates to the SUV. But all that is in the past and better late than never. Right now, the Harrier is in the best shape it has ever been. Changing the steering has really sorted out the only real dynamic flaw to it. It now becomes much better to drive, much smoother. It also has the power from the engine. It does need the petrol engine. That is one miss and that is going to come. But right now, it's only got the diesel engine. The interiors are updated. The infotainment is very nice. The sound system is banging. It's got the ADAS features. It's got the safety features. It's got everything packed into it. If I were to buy an SUV in this category today, the Harrier would be near the top of my list. But Tata Motors really needs to focus, double down on quality. That last 1%, just 1%, maybe even 0.5% is missing on the Harrier. And I have no doubt in the days, weeks and months to come, all that will be sorted out. But Tata Motors needs to get it right at the start, not wait for a couple of months once customer feedback comes in and then sort those things out, because that's doing a disservice to the Harrier. Because the Harrier, this SUV is really good and I would recommend it to anybody looking for an SUV in this category today.